themselves to delinked interpretation, whatever that is. We will look at it in a minute. Whereas when and where are somewhere in the middle, and why, how many are very hard to delink. In normal context, you can't. You have to set up a whole, there are these three numbers, and everybody had to do either this or that. It was a race where you had to choose either this or that or the other. And now I can say, how many books did you not read, or whatever, how many challenges did you not take, something like that. So numbers are, how many, how much, etc. can be delinked, but they're just not what you normally would think of in the normal context. But here is the basic idea is that these are definite in some sense, these are not definite. And you'll see this in the literature. In fact, the literature on Sluice, Chung et al. In their paper actually use the idea that this is definite and this is indefinite to account for certain facts. Okay? So who's working on Sluice? Somebody here is working on Sluice. So have you read Chung et al. 95? Okay. When you read that paper, remember this. They use this as plus definite, it cannot be maintained actually. So that's what we're going to look at. This one is minus definite. So again, this is very much a part of syntactic literature, and I would say semantic literature. We have all accepted that basically what this is when you say which book, it's basically like which of the books. That's what we have been, that's what the general view is. And it is true to some extent. So let's look at why he wants to do this. What are the advantages of thinking of delinking this way? So this is the superiority example. You can say who read what in English, but what did who read is not good. Now in Hindi it doesn't quite work in this way. That's what I'm saying. I'm not going to do too much of it. But the basic point is the subject should be fronted, not the object. Okay, that's the English rule if you look at this class. But if you look at this class of WH, then it doesn't seem to follow that rule. So 1C, which book did which student read, sounds quite acceptable. So, and then even who, so this is to say that for whatever reason, D-linked WHs don't obey the syntactic constraints on fronting, right? That's what we can glean from this. And now he says, look, if you create the right context, you can get even what did who read. So I know these three papers were written by these three students, but I'm damned if I know what who wrote. Doesn't sound so bad because we've already set up the context with three students, three papers, etc. So that was one reason for saying inherently, so delinking for whatever reason means you don't need to obey this fronting order. These, you don't need any context. It seems out of the blue if you say the sentence doesn't sound bad. With these, you need the context to promote the its delinked character. Okay? So it's kind of neutral. You need, the context is needed. And then the other example he used is from Baker, which says, now if you did syntactic, this is the island example. Which book did John know where Mary bought? This is not good because you have a WH island. But if you have a minimally different question, who knows where Mary bought what? Of course, if there's one person who knows everything, you'll just name that person. But it's possible that, we have to piece together the information, and in that case, it's easy enough to answer. John knows, who knows where Mary bought? The second, John knows, I don't know what I did there. Anyway, John knows where Mary bought what? That's when John knows the whole set of things. But the answer 2 is also possible. John knows where Mary bought the book, and Sue knows where she bought the pen. So this is one of the standard examples saying that if you have a WH in C2, covert scope taking is island insensitive. So what you can't do in 2A, you can do at LF in 2B, raise the WH all the way to the top, and on the specification, scope, correlation, or scope, specification, correlation, whatever, it then follows that you're pairing the two WHs. Okay? So again, Piasecki, remember, he wants to say this only happens with delinking. This is a context that allows for delinking. Notice that we don't particularly need to hear she bought a pen, a book, but maybe the context assumes that there's a set of things she bought, right? And then you can do this. So whatever, these are the two arguments that he makes, that he wants to capture by saying that in the domain of WH expressions, there's a set that's delinked and a set that's not delinked, or not inherently delinked. And then saying somehow delinking is subject to, either not subject to certain rules or has alternative ways of taking scope, whatever you want to say, okay? So he says one way of taking scope is movement. Movement is always island sensitive, but there must be an alternative, and that alternative is open to only delinked WH. So it's kind of unclear why this should be the case. Like in all these years, everybody, I think the importance of delinking is not being challenged by anyone. But how exactly to represent it such that it will derive these unusual properties hasn't been I don't think it has ever been done. But what I want to talk about is not even that. It's simply what does it mean for this to be definite, let's say. And in order to do that, let's look at how people have discussed, how people have defined delinking. So now I'm on page 2. The first context, this is from Tony Croc's work, I think, Heim 87, that 7 is missing. Croc 89, okay. So this is the context. A man walks into an apartment building in front of two women. So you're standing there, you see a man walk into the building. And one woman says to the other, who just went into the building? That sounds fine. If you say which man just went into the building, that sounds pretty weird. Unless you already know the three, so this is the delinked part. Why exactly this should work and who not, that's the point again. So now if you said which man went into the building, is good or bad, same as which of the men went into the building, right? So that's the equivalence between which n and which of the n. So it would follow straightforwardly that the determiner which, the WH counterpart of the determiner the, encodes the familiarity requirement. And that is a fairly standard way, and honestly that's what I always thought this is what I have to find a way to get scope, wide scope, using the definite in a definite determiner. So it would follow straightforwardly that the determiner which, the harder challenge is to relate definiteness of which to superiority amelioration, and even harder to relate it to exceptional scope. So why does definiteness mean exceptional scope? That was still an issue. But what I want to present to you is the fact that which n is not the same as which of the n, appearances notwithstanding. So I'm bringing another structure into the game, which is which, and I guess the partitive would be a DP, the books, men, authors, whatever, right? So I'm looking at this structure because basically what we started out with is the view that this is definite just the way this is definite. Okay? Alright, it's actually quite simple to show that they are not the same. So now I'm on 5a. Speaker A goes shopping and comes back and says, I bought a book for David. And speaker B says, which book did you buy? Completely acceptable. Which of the books did you buy? Very odd, right? And so that's odd. So that tells you whatever it is, there's some difference between these two, right? What would make which of the books did you buy is if you had already discussed, I should buy, maybe these are the three, these three would be good, and I can say which of them did you buy, right? But not, here there's no, all maybe is that he bought a book. What is more interesting, so certainly there's this difference between these two things, but there's also an interesting thing with who and what. Remember, they're supposed to be non-delinked, inherently not, they can go either way. But you can't really say, what did you buy? Because you say, what do you mean? I just told you I bought a book. So there's something interesting going on here with relation to discourse. And so this is in the first table I just put it in. A man enters a building, no contextually salient set of men, and you can't say which end. You can say who, you can't say which of the ends, right? So assuming you don't know which set you're quantifying over. Someone goes shopping, no contextually salient set of books. You can use which end. You can't use who or what. You can't use which of the ends. So the only one that seems to be behaving right now is which of the end, right? Okay. Third, now just because in the first case we had men, animate, in the second case we had books, inanimate, could that be, so controlling for that, now you're reading a paper and the first person says, hey, guess what? A Nigerian has won the Nobel Prize for Literature this year, right? It's perfectly natural. It's just like I bought a book, but this is a human being, and so you can easily respond, so which Nigerian won the Nobel Prize? Or simply which Nigerian? Again, no problem. And again, you can't say which of the Nigerians won the prize. And who is a little more, who won the Nobel Prize? So I put it in as this we will discuss a little bit. So the point is, what was clearly out? What did you buy when I said I bought a book? I say Nigerian won the prize. You say who won the prize? There's a sense in which we can, certainly you can say, so exactly who. But the best one is which Nigerian, I think. Okay. One last thing here in this.
Just who.
Who. So who? I think that works. So I remember I put this hatch mark and then I kind of, so there's something different about human, who which is plus animate plus human even maybe, and what which is certainly minus animate. Yeah, Praveen?
Is it also the case that you would prefer who to which Nigerian?
No, I doubt it.
Actually, the who is in that case isn't it equivalent to which one? Because in earlier case for which and parenthetical who among the Nigerian among Nigerians.
See, which
Well,
easily gives me a.
No, meaning I said that in the first case, the case of which you can say which one. But with who you have no option of who and who won. So who is probably taking care of both this.
Somehow which tells me that maybe I'm aware of the possible.
Candidates.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is.
Yeah. So you see, delinking is not as straightforward as we had thought. And let me add one more.
And maybe my intentions are skewed. So I'll
No, I'm not. No, I don't think that. I think, see, the job of the linguist is not to force intuitions into what they are not. There is something fundamentally at least potentially different between human and non-human objects that we will come to and it's very hard to control this. But it is true that hatch mark is probably not the best. It's not at the same level as what, right? What did you buy? And so let's hold off on that. I think but certainly the difference between which and which of the is very clear. There's no way you're getting, so which of the Nigerians won the Nobel Prize unless you already knew that there were 3 or 4 who were nominated. And you're asking which of them, right? So absent some context, you will not use which of the. And why is this? Okay, one last one and then I want to make one comment about that. Or maybe, yeah?
Is this to do with the common knowledge of accuracy and the speaker?
Yes and no. So far what we are talking about is common ground knowledge where both parties are, I might as well make the point I was going to make now, which is there are things that we are, there's a salient set of things, we're familiar with that, that's what it means, right? Everybody knows who's in the common ground. And if you look at which of the N, that seems to follow that. Well behaved. Okay? Of course we can say, we did talk about accommodation, right? Sometimes definites are not in the, like when we were talking, if I say I have, my sister, which we haven't discussed before, but if I said my sister, I'm going to meet my sister today, so she has a sister, you'll accommodate that. This cannot, the question is, where does this fit? We cannot say it fits here because we are not able to accommodate this, right? For whatever reason, when we are saying which of the Nigerians, it's too big a group. The only way to accommodate is if you had already talked about some subset that were potential winners of the Nobel Prize. So, and if accommodation works for this, in whichever way you make it work, then it should work for this. If it works, the reverse. If the reason this is acceptable is because there's some sense in which we are accommodating a salient set, then what's the problem here? Do you see the difference? Okay, let me make one other point. If all you're working with is domain salience, definiteness, whatever terms you're comfortable with, and lack of that, you have a two-way distinction. What these contexts are showing up are three-way distinctions, right? And that's where the challenge starts. So let me present one or two more contexts and then we'll, there's lots to discuss here. Before we do that, I want you to also think, again, I have not thought about this much for Hindi. What is the Hindi delinked case? Is it kaun si ladki? Yeah, is it kaun ladki? So in these cases, would we say, I went shopping, I bought a book for David. Will you say, kaun kitab? Tumne kaun kitab kharida or kaun si kitab kharidi? Kaun si seems more natural, right? If you say some Nigerian has won the Nobel Prize, will you say kaun Nigerian or kaun se Nigerian? Say not kaun Nigerian? Kiss Nigerian nay, because you would have, right? So fine. And with kiss, you can't have kaun se Nigerian. No, you could. Kaun se Nigerian name is grammatical, right? Yes, Kalki?
So in some dialects you can, instead of that you can have like kaun si kitab, you can have also kya kitab. Like, and even in that, like for people you can also have, there's a kaun Nigerian, you can do it.
Kaun Nigerian. Yes, so I think in my dialect I can say kaun kitab, kaun aadmi. But I'm not always, so what I haven't done is, not doing a slice and dice of these contexts, right? What I haven't gone back and seen where exactly I want to put in C, where I just prefer the C, or whether, I would be just as happy with one or the other. But these are all things that remain open. Yeah.
Who won the Nobel Prize? It's okay, but somehow to me sounds better if I just ask who or who is it.
Mm-hmm.
Does who won the Nobel Prize sort of
Yeah, it's repetitive. Yeah.
Who is it? There's a familiarity that left from the discourse.
Right. Who is that? But what about which Nigerian? That's completely okay.
That's the best.
Right, but you're still using which, so the idea is you don't want to repeat it sounds wordy. But which Nigerian is good? Which is predicted not to be because I can't say which of the Nigerians, right? Even if I do a short answer, Rinku.
Yeah, ma'am. If the context is something like I met a man on the road, what would your response be? Like which man and who? Make obviously you right.
Will you say which man? That's the thing. You're still talking human, and you'll see that's exactly okay. One last one, and then we do a table, and then another one. So now we have a baking context. So all of you watch that BBC show. There's like what is it called? There's a lot of cooking shows, but there's a bake-off kind of a thing. Anyway, pretend that there's one. So suppose all the contestants have to bake a blueberry pie. So, but then we're going to see which one is the best, right? But everybody's pie is a blueberry pie because that's the rule of the game. So now you have like 10 pies on the table, and you ask which pie did you bake? You can point, you get that one, right? The one on the left or whatever. Which of the pies did you bake? That's also good. This is a contextually salient set, right? We have a set of pies right there. So these two are behaving the same. Can you ask what did you bake? So this is a blueberry baking contest. It seems odd to say what did you bake? Of course, I'm a contestant. I baked a blueberry pie. So this is, again, now notice that if you just think in terms of delinking, non-delinking, yes, this is non-delinked, but it's not inherently non-delinked. It can be delinked. So why should it matter? Why can't I just say that one? I think there's another example. In a minimally different context, where you have a potluck, where different people make different dishes, so there's a bunch of things on the table, and now you can say which dish did you bring, and you can say the stew. Which of the dishes did you bring? That's also okay. It's all contextually salient. I can also say what did you bring, and you can say the stew, or you can point to that one. So so summarizing, table 2 says you have a man entering a building, no contextually salient set, and somehow which end is bad, what is good, which of these. So you see it varies, right? 3 pies of the same kind, contextually salient, and now funnily enough, who and what is not possible. But in table 3, you have a contextually salient set, but they are different things. They are different names you can give them, right? For example, and now what becomes okay. So now everything is behaving reasonably well. You have a contextually salient set. So the is good, which end is good, and who has no objection to being contextually linked to a contextually salient set, that is good too. Okay, so the connection between morphosyntax and discourse is not captured by attributing which with a presupposition that it range over contextually salient sets, because and taking what and who as neutral, because these two, you haven't made any distinction between these two, the presuppositions of these two sets. Good? Okay. So let's look at the, yeah.
If there's a display of, suppose, bouquets of flowers of different colors, would there be a difference if I say which color do I prefer as opposed to what color do I prefer?
Okay. So this is a good point which I only put in 3. I left out of this discussion, so I'll bring it in later. What is the status of what n, right? And I won't answer you don't have to ask me, you can tell me, I guess your intuition is that you can say what color, right? But remember that what color, you still have different colors. So in the blueberry pie, would you be able to say what pie did you bake? That still sounds odd, right? I'll say one thing about what, which will come up later also. What and in English, again, I don't know if it translates. Someone said you can say kya kitab, right? Or so I don't know if it translates the same way in Hindi or not. But in English, I can say, what man would do such a thing? I don't think I can say what man did such a thing, or what man was is standing outside. It sounds odd to me, right? So it's good in modal context, but very odd with humans again. I think you can say, what book did you buy, very easily. I'm not even sure I know what the difference between what book and which book would be there. I suppose you could ask what Nigerian won you can probably do that, right? Nigerian has won I don't know. Can you say what Nigerian won sounds a bit, so
Which seems more contextually set-wise bound than what?
Yeah.
Like if I'm aware of a set of colleges and I want to ask like which college did you go to, that sounds better than suppose someone went to college in a different country and I don't know the names. I would say what college
did you go to?
as opposed to which.
So you're saying it's kind of non-delinked and stays non-delinked.
Or whether we know all the members of the set or
set,
not.
yeah.
Okay,
Members
so
of
that would be,
which.
but so that is saying it's based on this idea of delinking, knowing or not knowing the set. It doesn't explain why I can't say what man is she talking to. I think it sounds odd, even if I don't know the set of, or in that context where people were going into the room, what man went into the room, into the building sounds a bit odd. So there's definitely, so what we are seeing is a more complex kind of a divide. On the one hand, we have a choice between which and who, what, monomorphemic, and then there's the special class of what n that I mention here, but I don't totally analyze here. I have a few, I can give you some references for that. And then the other is between human and non-human, that seems to be coming up in different ways. Okay, so, yes, Praveen? Yeah?
Is there also something happening when you simply say in response to, that is question here, that is 6A,
Uh-huh.
you simply say who, and when you say who won the Nobel Prize?
And what's your intuition?
My intuition is that when I say who won the Nobel Prize, that if that's a question that is asked, I'm also assuming maybe a possibility of other non-Nigerians. I mean, it becomes a wider thing. But when I say just who, then it becomes the most perfect way to ask the question, because then it can only be a Nigerian.
Familiarity.
The familiar. I don't want to use the word familiar.
Yeah, now I've made everybody leery of using all those words. But it cannot be more perfect than which Nigerian, I don't believe.
If you just say who and stop.
Who?
I mean, yeah, so a Nigerian has won the Nobel Prize for Literature. Who?
Yeah, I would.
Which Nigerian? The which Nigerian has a ring of familiarity which I'm not comfortable with. I mean, if you're wrong,
Okay. We will. No. I'm okay with disagreements.
I'm asking a question. I'm supposed to be
Uh-huh.
ignorant about it,
Yeah.
city conditions and all that. But which Nigerian has a ring of familiarity to this?
So
So it sort of clashes with what we've just done.
So you are more in line with, it's like this little. So let me put it another way. Is it as bad as saying which of the Nigerians?
No.
So that's really the hard part. I agree with you, there's something going on, but we are in the business of trying to capture intuitions, so you have to capture both ways, and I acknowledge that this is not quite the right.
Does delinking imply familiarity?
That's the question we are trying to answer, right? I am actually arguing against a view of delinking that says that's what this is. This is familiarity. This is behaving like what we understand. If you look at the definition of delinking in Pisetsky or even in Kroc or any of the people who actually they've really defined it this way. In effect, it quantifies over a set that is familiar and known. That's what this is. If that's the case, these two should behave the same in all contexts, and they're not.
Aren't there actually two aspects to that familiarity? One is, in the qualitative case, there is also kind of a domain of that entities which is getting more specified.
Mm-hmm.
But in that case, which book? It's only the books. So that's it. I think there are three levels. One is neutral, which book specifies the book domain.
Mm-hmm.
Which of the books specifies further what is more familiar within the domain of books.
True. But if that was all there was, we wouldn't be calling it D-link. Why are you calling it D-link? If all you're saying is more specificity than who, like man versus author, what could be anything, could be book, table, whatever. Whereas once I say which book, that's what we always assumed, right? But why that is not delinking, that's simply saying it's more specific than this, which of course it is, yeah.
I don't think that this in that sense of delinking, this is delinking. It just adds to the presupposition in some case.
That we are restricted in the set, it's a subset of what this could quantify over. And that may well be the case, but that's not how, then don't call this definite or indefinite, because as we were talking, this could be a set of known or unknown books that we are familiar or unfamiliar with. And so that's sort of, okay, so of course these things don't have straightforward, again, this is also something that I'm not, I've only presented once before, and the comments I got, I have incorporated those. But there's obviously more. However, I will say that this distinction is not trivial, and not trivial to capture, because for precisely the reason that we have very clear intuitions, even those who would argue that who is better than which Nigerian in 6A have to accept that it is much better than which of the Nigerians, right? That's the now. So let's, yeah. Wait, I have to give, yeah.
Wouldn't there be a sort of, would you see a difference between using which book and what book?
Okay, let me now play the boss. We are not going to talk about what and for some time. Not going to discuss it. We have enough problems here. So not today, because after lunch we are going to, you guys will be working, you will have your chance. Remember, you have presentations to make, so you can certainly take it in different directions. But tomorrow we will complete this handout, and if what N is not there, I'll bring in what little I know of it, and then we can have more discussion, right?
If we replace the word Nigerian with a student, like a student won a Nobel Prize, so which student won a Nobel Prize and which of the students won the Nobel Prize? They both seem to be more closer to each other than which student and who.
Okay, so a student won a Nobel Prize seems, and I respond, which student sounds more like good or bad?
You know the students.
You must know, yeah, it would only make sense if, so out of the blue, it's bad, is what you're saying, right? Okay, so we will, clearly it's not the winning the Nobel Prize that may be in and of itself relevant. That is not something I had thought about, but let's see if it fits in with the way. So what I'm talking about is actual versus potential definiteness, whatever that means. So let's see. Okay, so there are two things that people have picked on. I gave you one of them, which focused on this part, the definiteness and familiarity of the definite. The other is this partitive. And when I was writing, this has been also noted by people. Did I put in their references there? At any rate, I think Haim, whatever, somewhere in the full paper it's there. Which allows of the. Now, I guess in Hindi we would say unme se kaun, right? We could say unme se kaun kitab. I don't know, so I'm not sure. Like I said, I haven't done the Hindi for it. But in English, which goes with partitive, we can have two types of partitives, right? Which of the books, which type of books. What of the books is not possible. So those of you who like the what N, there is a difference between which N and what N. Whether that difference plays out or not, I don't, is something one can discuss. Certainly it's possible to say what type of books, right? So it's not that you cannot have, that these things don't participate in partitive construction. It's whether it needs something here, which type of books which can go by itself, which of the books, but what cannot participate in a partitive like this. And some people have said that's the source of the difference. Of course, on the view that we look at the partitive, once we have a partitive, and the partitive, the base of the partitive is definite, or the inner NP is definite, we can work from there. So I'm just going to introduce this, and then I'm going to stop because I think everyone's getting hungry. Yeah. Okay. Who is a little bit different in the sense that you can say who of the men doesn't sound as bad to some people, as certainly who type of men is totally bad, right? There's no way you're doing that. But what type of books is good? So there is a difference between who and what. Again, I don't know. In Hindi, we would say kis tarah ki kitab, right? For type. So, again, I don't know if C can be introduced there or not. So there are a number of issues here. So the point that the way in which I want to approach this is to say which of the N is felicitous. So which of the N, this is the simple case. All you need to have is a theory of definiteness, familiarity, let's say. It should be a discourse familiar set. And all you're saying is that that presupposition projects up. So you don't have to say anything about which per se. You simply say this is a definite, it has an inner definite DP. That means that set is presupposed, contextually salient, however you want to say, put it, and then the whole DP inherits, it projects up to the DP, and then you're done, right? And you remember this is the well-behaved one. So that's 12. A question with which of the N's is felicitous if there's a contextually salient set N that the WH phrase ranges over. That's not the problem. What about which N? And now I'm saying this is felicitous if for every X in N, and remember it can be restricted to a smaller domain, it's possible that X is in the common ground. And now we have a way of thinking about names of books, not that I know all the names, right, of the books in the world, but these are public figures, right? I mean, these are public objects. A book is not someone, it's not something that we can say we won't know, right? Whereas a random student or a random man out of a non-contextually salient set is not guaranteed, it's not necessarily the case that I may know that person, okay? So that's what I think is it's very close, which is why they do work in most cases. The point is, this is good in a superset of the cases that this is good in, right? That's basically the thing. So the possibility is meant to differentiate which N and which of the N. So in principle, books, authors, celebrities are entities in the public domain, and they are known entities. They're potentially known entities. Either they are known or potentially known. That's what that modality is supposed to cue to. Alternatively, it would be possible to accommodate a book, author, celebrity named in the answer, but you don't want to put it all on accommodation, because once you accommodate, then you should be able to also do which of the Nigerians, which of the books. So this alternatively is not really something I'm pushing. What about ordinary individuals? They can satisfy 13, but in order to satisfy 13, they have to be delimited more specifically, right? So student, men, women, or etc., all of them, of course, lend themselves to a delinked use, but only if we can think of them as contextually salient. So something more has to be done in order to make it possible for us to use which book, which one. So there's no noun that is inherent, is such that you couldn't use which. Of course you can, but they all have to be potentially known. Every member of that set has to be potentially known. So that's the old, the canonical view of delinking, that it should be contextually salient set. You can relax it in the case of things that are names of books, names of authors, etc. So that's sort of an interesting, yeah, that's my story. That's what I'm sticking to for which N. When we come back, we will talk a little bit more about what, or tomorrow, right? Yeah. Okay. We have time for 1 or 2 questions if there are any. Otherwise, lunch.
All languages are generally there is a in between the all languages we make three-way distinction.
So that is okay. A lot of languages. Since Pisetsky's paper, that is 87, so full 30 years now. A lot of languages have been shown to have this dealing, non-dealing distinction, right? Two-way. But this three-way, literally I presented this in February last year. And, the people there, like the English facts, they certainly got this, everybody was on board with this distinction, that there's some distinction and that it cuts in a way that we didn't expect. I don't know if this is true. If let's say, I don't even know how Delikin works in Hindi, to be honest, but let's say I look at Macedonian. One of my students had worked on Macedonian clitic left dislocation. The interesting thing there is that, okay, I'll just say this and then we really should break. So there are languages in which, let's say if you have a delinked WH like which book, then you get a clitic before the verb. That is only sensitive to the morphosyntax, so it only goes with which N. It will not go with what N. It will not go with what even in a context where it's delinked. We're talking about a set of things and now I can say, so what did you buy, right? That's the canonical delinked case. So it doesn't even show the kind of flexibility that we were, at least in that particular context. So who knows about this? But it would be worth testing because the terms in which I'm explaining it is possible that a language really has only this, and it can, especially a language like Hindi, which doesn't have the word the, right? Although we do have partitives, we could always have unme se kaun kind of construction where you kind of drop something. But yeah, it's worth testing. And so one thing could be, when we look at this, maybe tomorrow when we are done with scope marking. Anyone still want to work on scope marking, or now this is interesting? Today you work on scope marking. I would like us to work on delinking because I think we'll find some things that we haven't thought about before. So maybe tomorrow we look at this. The rest shouldn't take that long to present because that's the great thing with new stuff. That's all there is. I don't know much more than what I have here. So we can do that tomorrow. Okay? Alright, so off to lunch. Yeah, sure. Then we will say which of the Nigerians, right? So
I'm confused as to how it's not narrowing down the domain of mutual familiarity.
No, so which of the definitely does that, right? The question is, why don't we feel the need to do all this narrowing when we just say which Nigerian? So do you get the difference in that context between the acceptability of which Nigerian and which of the Nigerians, right? Whatever it is we do for which of the Nigerians, we don't need to do.
Because that allows for a wider.
Yes, but what does that mean? Because if you make it wide, then you're going there.
Going to be restricted.
Yeah, and why is it that books and man and author allows for that widening, but book and author allows for that widening, but not man, right? So if you put all of the burden of
explanation on it,
Got the impression.
then it's totally neutral with respect to that. So that's, I mean, in the end, maybe it's not a big difference, but it's still something
I have
worth
at least
thinking
one
about because I'll tell you honestly, this is how I kept, when I looked at the data with covert scope, which is what I have been working on, and that's a kind of a long time interest, I was really looking for a systematic way to use this to get wide scope effects. But then if there's this difference, then I don't need to make it like this, I need to find a way to work with this. So yeah, I should erase this for the next people.
Do we have to shift our stuff as well? Do we come back and after the lunch and then back on that?
Okay. They don't need it right away at one. Mhm.
It's one of the best to differentiate to show if who and what is.
No,